see the cat? He a big boy. We call him Plumpus, McLumpus. He's let's see if I can, maybe I can kind of scoot over and, because it's going to be kind of distracting. All right, today's hump day. Happy hump day, everybody. Today's hump day lecture is going to be short and sweet. This is biomechanics class. In case you're watching on accident, this is biomechanics 415. And today I'm going to give you a little bit of application on the last lecture in terms of simultaneous and sequenced motion, and applying that to some rehab and exercises, okay? So 0 is a number, right? 1 is a number, 2 is a number, but 0 is a number. And so when we think about sequenced motion, now let's go to simultaneous motion. Simultaneous, you have to have two things moving at the same time, at least two things. Because the concept, as I mentioned last class, is, hey buddy, like I mentioned last class, is one joint is trying to take your distal segment angularly one way. The other joint is trying to take your distal segment angular the other way. And when they work at the same time, they cancel out each other's angulation and summate each other's translation, meaning that the elbow is trying to take you forward, the shoulder's trying to take you forward. So if they can cancel out each other's rotation, they can summate each other's translation, your hand goes straight forward, right? So simultaneous motion has to include at least two joint motions. Sequential motion, even though the concept of sequence one after the other has the intent of multiple joint motions just done one after the other, one joint motion done by itself is considered a sequence. One thing can be a sequence of one. What I mean by that is if I only move my elbow, my fist will not stay in the same place linearly. It's going to move angularly, right? Now we know that joint motions have general motion combination, but the point is that if you only move one joint, I need you to see that it's impossible to have translation of a distal segment, hands, feet, etc. So anytime you see a distal segment spinning like a clock, it's usually a sequence of one. So like if I raise my shoulder out to the side, and you see that angulation, my distal segment is not staying in place, or it's not translating forward. It's a sequence of one, okay? So on page, oh gosh, my voice cracked. Remember, it's super early here at the Campbell household because my boys, I can't really do a lecture when my boys are being boys. So this is on one of your early pages. I have it on page 6 on my PDF copy here, but human movement strategies for rehabilitation and exercise, okay? So the reason I have this in here, this is going to be a short application question, and we could go down the rabbit hole for a while, but I'm not. And also, I'm going to emphasize, for me to confirm that you watch this lecture, I would like for you to type in the word completed. Today's true confirmation term is completed. I'm going to remind you at the end of the video, okay? Completed. So just write that down on a piece of paper and remember, completed. So most of you have been introduced to the term chains, open chain, closed chain. And that term can sometimes get kind of confusing because, if if you're doing squats, right, that's considered closed chain. But what about what chain of what? Remember, in simultaneous motion, I can have my upper extremity do stuff and I can have my lower extremity do stuff. So, let's say I'm comparing traditional chain exercises, and I say, well, doing a squat is closed chain because my feet are fixed on the ground. And doing shoulder press would be open chain. Well, what if I'm doing like a thruster where I have an element of a squat and then I have a dumbbell press? Like, let's say I have dumbbells. So the point is that you can look at this exercise kind of now differently. You can't look at it as the whole exercise is a chain. You can say, well, the lower extremity version or the lower extremity simultaneous motion would be closed, but then the upper would be open. So that's the first thing, is that we can kind of look at upper, lower as kind of different. They don't have to follow the same rules, right? And then the other concept is this. If you define open and close by just is something fixed or is something moving, think about a leg press. I'm going to pull up a leg press exercise up on Google. It's I think the French version of Google is Google. And of course, my phone is being super slow. My computer's being super slow. So I'm gonna pull up, oh, here we go. Double Google leg press machine. Okay, so check this out. So what I want you to notice is that in a leg press machine, I better do it on my phone. Okay. I think you guys know what a leg press machine is. Two-phase. Bruh. All right, I gotta do this. Hey, buddy. Hanging out there? Two-Face looks like he's ready for the beach. All right. Leg press machine. Leg press machine. Search. Image. Okay, so check this out. I see that. There we go. Okay. Now, what's really interesting about this exercise is you say, well, this would be an open chain exercise because now the feet are going to be able to move in a straight line, right? But what I want you to notice, though, is that there's some similarities between this leg press exercise and the regular squat, in that friction from the ground when you're doing a squat and friction from the machine when you're doing the leg press, friction is preventing your knees or your hips independently from moving your feet perpendicular to the ground, meaning that the ground's pushing you up. Friction in both of those exercises is preventing you from sliding away. Here's another way to look at it. If I was doing a squat on roller skates, my foot wouldn't push through the ground, right? But now if I was on roller skates, my knees could roll from the ground. It would be kind of open in that regard, right? So the point is that chains can be looked at in two different ways. It can be looked at linearly, simultaneous motion, and it can be looked at angularly, sequenced motion. Here's another example of what I'm trying to get to, okay? So let's let's take an exercise that would be working the chest, okay? And I'm going to show you different ways of looking at this, okay? So let's look at a bench press exercise. Okay. Bench press. So this is a traditional bench press. Oh gosh, guys. You would think at this early in the morning the Wi-Fi would be great, right? Okay, let's forget this network. Okay, traditional bench press. Okay, take a look at this. Okay, so let's look at what's allowed to move simultaneously. The hands, right? So in the bench press, the hands are free to move up and down because I'm going to have simultaneous motion of the elbows and shoulders. Simultaneous motion of the elbows and the shoulders have to happen in order for the hands to go up and down, right? In other words, I cannot move in a sequenced pattern. I cannot just move the elbows. That bar is going to prevent that. I cannot move just the shoulders. The bar is going to prevent that. I have to move the elbows and the shoulders at the same time in order to let the hands go up and down simultaneously. So this exercise would be open to simultaneous motion. In other words, it is allowable to have movement of my distal segment up and down. Sorry guys, I'm gonna come on. But what I am not allowed, open, can move up and down. What I am not allowed because of the bar that's there is I cannot say, hey, elbows, you alone move. I can't just move my elbow. I am not allowed sequence. So the rotational road of sequence is closed in that exercise. So the point is that open and closed chain traditionally has just been two big categories. It's either open or closed, but there's a lot of gray in there. What would you call, for example, let's say for this bench press, I'll give you another example. If you just said that this is open, right, because the hands can move up and down, but we're going to compare it to dumbbell bench press. Ooh, boy, I misspelled that bad. Okay, so check this out. In a dumbbell bench press, right? Well, now, for the dumbbell, because the bar isn't connecting my right hand and my left, right? In other words, because of that bar that's there, I can't independently just move my elbows. And I can't independently, but if I have a dumbbell there, well now I can rotate one joint at a time. I can. Now I can do it simultaneously, but I can also choose to do it sequenced. And the point is that, as you know, it is a lot harder to replicate movement when everything is open, when your distal segment is open to linear and it is also open to angular. You know, imagine someone doing a bench press for the first time, a novice. Person comes into the gym, you're a fitness trainer, personal trainer or athletic trainer, and you're trying to do work the chest for the first time. You can imagine if you put them on dumbbells, their movement pattern is going to be all over the place because they're on roller skates and they've never exercised like that before. So they're all over the place because they don't have the motor programs to have the communication between their shoulders and their elbows to know how to cancel each other out, to have straight line motion. You're all over the place. So the point is that dumbbell bench press is just as open to straight line motion as the barbell, but the barbell closes to angular. It closes the sequenced road. It's open to simultaneous, but it is closed to sequenced. In other words, when you're at the barbell, you have to move elbows and shoulders. When you're with the dumbbell, you don't have to move elbows and shoulders. You could just move your right elbow. You could just move your left elbow. You could just move your shoulder. And when you are more open to linear and angular, it is a lot harder to replicate the movement patterns because you have more what they call degrees of freedom. You have more chance of not having perfect or consistent motion, okay? So let's think about how other ways we can view this concept, right? What is a push-up? Okay, so traditionally people think of push-ups as being a closed chain exercise. Here's an example of a push-up. But let's look at it in more detail. A push-up, the hand is not allowed to move in a straight line. Hand is fixed, you move your body about your hand. The distal segment is closed to straight line motion. You're not going to push through the ground. But it's also closed to angular motion. It's closed to simultaneous motion. It's not going to do this through the ground. But you know what else it's closed with? It's closed to sequenced motion. In other words, you're not going to have this, you're not going to have this, and you're not going to have this. A push-up is a traditional push-up where your hands on the ground and there's sufficient friction to prevent angular motion. But think of this. Some of you therapist techs would know this. Watch this. Slideboard. Board push-up. Ooh, I can't spell. I'm gonna, you know that song, I Feel Good. I'm gonna write a song called I Can't Spell. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Okay, check this out. This is called a slideboard. And what a slideboard is it's two surfaces that have very little friction. You reduce friction so you can actually slide parallel with the ground. So now, because friction isn't holding my hand in place, preventing angular motion, well, now you can imagine if I can slide, now I have the ability to move angular in certain ways. I can move my shoulder angularly. I can have a sequence of one, my shoulder. So my point is that doing push-ups on a slide board or doing push-ups on a ball that can move around, but I think slide board's the best example. Doing push-ups on the slide board is still closed to simultaneous motion. You're still not going to push through the ground. But now it's open to sequenced motion. It's open to angular. So a slide board push-up would be what we consider closed open. The first option of open and closed chain is the simultaneous. That's the traditional straight line, what's fixed, what's allowed to move of a distal segment. The second option is the sequence motion, the angular motion, the one at a time. So slide board push-up would be closed to straight line movement of the distal segment, but open to angular sequenced motion of a distal segment. That makes sense? Another example of closed open, you would never do this, but I'm just giving you an example. Imagine doing a squat with roller skates on. So your distal segment on the roller skates, you're still closed to straight line, not gonna push through the ground. But now you know darn well when you go down and come up, your knees could move independently of your hips now because the angular road is open. Okay? So in your book, I have basic examples. And in the review, I'm gonna also go over some basic examples for you guys. But you look at in your textbook, I'm looking at it right now on my computer screen, an example of open, meaning it's open to straight line motion, simultaneous motion of the distal segment, and it's also open to sequenced angular of the distal segment. And so you look at that dumbbell bench press, open. And if something is open, that is the most amount of freedom that your joints can have to move, and it's hard to replicate those movement patterns, right? This could go up higher than the other. This could angulate. It's hard to, right? So dumbbell bench press, dumbbell shoulder press, open to straight line, open to angular. Think about something like this too, like when you're doing a lunge. When your foot is off the ground, when you step forward to catch yourself, the leg that's off the ground is open. And a good way to show that is, notice if you do lunges today, notice how it's dang near impossible to step in the exact same place every time. You know, your first step may be in one spot. Then your next lunge, your foot may be a little bit to the left. And your third lunge, your foot may be a little short. Your fourth lunge, it may be a little further away. It's hard to replicate the same movement patterns when your distal segment is free to go straight and free to go across. Okay? So the whole concept of open, closed, open, closed has nothing to do with difficulty of the exercise, like in terms of like, you know, this one's harder or easier. In terms of like muscular hard, it's about movement patterns. So what I mean by that is closed exercises are easier to replicate movement with. In other words, if you're doing push-ups, you're gonna have dang near the same movement patterns. Why? Because your hands aren't going anywhere. You go up, you come down. But if you're doing bench press, you can sway, right? The dumbbell bench press, it's hard to replicate those movement patterns. So it's not about what's harder or easier from a muscle intensity, because as we know, one of the limiting factors of doing a push-up is you better be able to do as much as your weight, right? But I can choose to do lightweight for the dumbbells. It's about replicating movement patterns. And in closed settings, you replicate movement patterns. Think about this, personal trainers, you close roads all the time. When you spot someone and they're doing dumbbells and they're all over the place, and you spot them by preventing them from going forward, back, left, right, and you guide them in the functional direction you want to go, you're closing roads. You're closing unwanted movement patterns and making them go where you want. I'll give you another example of that. Let's get out of dumbbell bench press and go like to a machine bench press. Watch how a machine bench press closes angular roads. You know what a machine bench press is? A machine bench press is a mechanical spotter. Because think about it. If I'm doing dumbbell bench press and someone spot me, they're making sure that I'm going straight up and down and that I'm not going out front, because in dumbbells, those angular roads are open. So watch how a machine bench press closes those rows. Okay? Let me find a good one. Okay, here's one. So check this out. Right? So a machine bench press, in this example, would be open to linear or open to simultaneous motion, right? In other words, it's going to allow your hands to move in a straight line because of simultaneous motion of the shoulder and the elbow. But that machine will not allow angular motion. The machine will not allow sequence. The machine won't allow just for the elbow or just the shoulder. The machine is a spotter that's gonna make you go in one direction. So the bench press machine would be open to straight line, open to simultaneous, but closed to angular. It's open in one movement strategy, but closed in a different movement strategy. So let's use the bench press, let's use a chest exercise to give you an example of all the different types of complete chains, total chains. An example of working your chest with an open exercise, open to simultaneous, open to sequence, would be dumbbell bench press. And again, you think, the more open, the harder it is to replicate the movement. You're laying on your chest, dumbbell bench press, open simultaneous, open sequenced. Closed, the other extreme would be a push-up, traditional push-up where your hands aren't sliding. Closed to simultaneous. Now, when I say simultaneous motion, of course there's movement at the shoulders and the elbows. But remember, we're talking about the distal segment being able to move in a straight line. So when my hands are on the ground, yes, I have joint motions, but I don't have joint motions where my distal segment is free to move, like in a dart throw or a jab. So it's closed to simultaneous motion in which the distal segment would be free to straight line move. And it's closed to sequenced. I can't move my hand angularly because of just my elbow. So push-up would be closed. And it's a lot easier to replicate movement patterns with a push-up. What would be example of working the chest with an open, closed, meaning open to straight line, but closed to angular? Okay, that would be the machine, right? The machine chest press, where the machine only allows straight line motion of the distal segment. The machine does not allow sequenced motion of just one segment. So the machine bench press would be open, closed. Open to straight line motion, closed to sequenced angular motion. And then the last one would be, well, how would you work the chest where straight line is closed, but the angular is open? I'm going to give you an example of that. That would be, watch. This one right here. You guys have seen that one before, right? The pec fly machine. Ooh, there we go. Just got to get in there. So think about it. The pec fly machine doesn't allow you to do this. It only allows sequence. It only allows angular, which means that it is closed to simultaneous motion. I can't move my elbows and my shoulders at the same time. I can only move my shoulders. Okay? Another example of closed to linear but open. So Think of it like this. Closed to linear or closed to straight line motion of distal segment, but open to angular, those are gonna be exercises that isolate one joint at a time and prevent you from cheating. Because if you think about it, let's pretend I'm doing a curl, and you guys seen people do this before. If I'm standing up with a barbell or a dumbbell, and I'm just trying to isolate my elbow flexors, right? But you've seen people where they rock and cheer. I've seen people at a gym keep a 90-degree angle and just do this. And from their perspective, they don't know any better. They're, hey, I'm making the weight go up and down. But they have the freedom to have simultaneous motion. They can move legs and elbows and shoulders, and they can have sequence motion. And so in other words, they have more ability to cheat. And I'm not saying sometimes functional whole body motions, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if your intention was for them to only move the elbows, if you're open, it gives you more ability to cheat. So how would you potentially close roads or close options to just move where you want them to move? And that's either spot them or machine them. So in other words, imagine getting on a preacher curl, right? So let me get to preacher. Ooh, oh my gosh, I misspelled it so bad. Sometimes I misspell things so bad, like, it's like, are you sure that's what are you trying to do, Cam? So think about it, guys. Look what the preacher curl does. Notice how the padding closes the shoulder road. And your position closes your back to cheat and your legs to cheat. It puts you in a position where the only road that is open is sequenced angular. If you're just trying to move the elbow. So in other words, it does close a straight line. Now you may say, well, the distal segment's free to move. Yes, but it's only free to move angularly. It's only free to move, the hand is only free to move because of the elbow. The hand is not free to move because of elbow and shoulder. That's what I'm trying to get you to see, because I closed the shoulder road and I'm only able to angulate at the elbow. Okay, so that would be an example of closed to linear because I'm not allowing multiple joint motions to move at the same time, and open to angular. The leg extensor machine is also the same, right? I know you guys call them leg extension machines, but you know how I feel about that. So let's look at one more. Peg extensions, nice, bro. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. Okay, so think about it. The only thing that's allowed to move are your knees. You can't cheat at the hips, you can't cheat at the trunk. So this machine is your personal expensive spotter. It is closing the simultaneous motion road. You are not allowed to move your feet in a straight line. You're only allowed to move in a sequence of one. Only allow knee motion, closing hip and knee motion. Okay, so that's the lecture for today. It's introducing you through basic, well-known exercises that you can view traditional exercises a little differently. Or you may be like, well, I understand open and close, but sometimes there's these exercises that it just doesn't make sense. I think it would be closed, but I kind of think it has some elements of open. And the answer is yeah. So again, think about how sometimes these things have other things in common, like going back to the bench, the squat and the leg press. The squat and the leg press have something in common. in addition to having something that's not in common. The leg press machine and the squat both are closed to sequenced angular motion of just the knees or the hips. They have that in common. The friction generated between your foot and the surface of either the ground or the plate is not going to let your knee move by itself, nor will it let your hip move by itself. It's closed to angular motion. It's closed to sequence motion. And in the leg press, it's only going to allow simultaneous motion to get that distal segment to move in a straight line. Think about it. When you're doing the leg press, your foot is going in a straight line because of simultaneous motion. So the leg press and the squat have something in common. They are both closed to sequenced angular motion, but they have something that's different. The leg press is open to simultaneous straight line motion, where obviously the squat is closed. You're not going to push through the ground, okay? All right, so hit me up if y'all have any questions or clarifications. Again, I'm offering to FaceTime anybody that needs some help clarifying. Today's word to confirm that you watched the video is completed. Completed. You guys have a good day.